Welcome back, guys. This is Schauer Thoughts with Sarah Schauer. Today's episode, we're going to be covering anti-intellectualism when it comes from a moral or philosophical, sometimes, actually most of the time, religious reasons for being anti-science, anti-vax, and anti-intellectual. Before we get into that, I need to tell you about how my week has been going, even though I recorded yesterday. But something interesting did happen today. So the SAFE Act is about to hit the Senate floor, and the SAFE Act is basically like going to strip a whole bunch of American women of their right to vote if they got married and then changed their last name to their husband's last name. They now need to provide a real ID and passport that matches, the name matches their birth certificate, and obviously if you've changed your last name because you got married, then you will be excluded from right to vote. So I posted about this on Instagram and TikTok, and I was like, we all see the rise of golden retriever husbands, and if you have a golden retriever husband, I'm so happy for you. But I was like, it's so interesting that there's so many influencer married couples, and that their whole shtick is that they're happily in love and all this stuff. And I wanted to make another podcast episode about the message of protect and provide that a lot of men seem to have internalized. And I mean, like, it's kind of beaten into them by the system. And I wanted to take a closer look at the protecting and the providing, because the capitalism aspect and, women kind of starting to outpace men in certain careers and, with education, that, providing is not as much on the table. And then I was like, the protecting aspect, we already know, like, violence rates in households, and so that will be discussed. But then I was like, I want to know if any influencer married couples have posted about, the SAFE Act yet. Are there any golden retriever husbands that have been like, oh no, this will not stand, I must protect my wife's right to vote and my wife's autonomy? And I asked people to tag me, and then I kind of just asked the general question on my Instagram story. I got an interesting response from a woman who said her husband says it's not that important. And I was like, it's not that important that your husband calls his senator to oppose the SAFE Act? So it's not, your right to vote is not that important. His wife's right to vote is not that. This is not like, what color you want to paint the living room. This is your right to vote. Now, I do also want to do another episode on what love actually is and what it entails. And since I can break down emotions in a more granular way, and like I can do, cultural and then sort of like different types of love and caring. But it's not looking good. It's kind of deeply upsetting. I feel so bad for this woman. I in no way want to degrade her or mock her. I feel genuinely heartbroken for her. It's just so, are you serious? But I mean, this is Schauer Thoughts, and that's one hell of a way to start the day. But I hope that, please protect your wife's right to vote. Also, please protect your own right to vote. And Jesus Christ, what the hell? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I hope, you know what? That's a lot, but we are about to hop in the shower, quote unquote. So no, that should always be top of the mind. We have got to protect women a lot more. And I'm not even your husband, and I want to protect your wife, okay? So that's why provide and protect is going to be another concept I'd like to break apart, but we are, oh God, I'm sorry, I'm disgusted, which is perfect because I'm about to talk about morals and disgust. We've talked about it a million times, but so we're going to get into people who are anti-intellectual because of more religious reasons or, individual philosophical reasons, which is interesting because the personal philosophy of these people is, I don't know. I mean, okay, But yeah, so we're gonna get into that. I did want to talk about being raised Southern Baptist. Now, what's interesting is that my mom is a doctor, my dad programs computers, and so they're not anti-science. They converted later in life from Southern Baptist to Christian Scientists, which is a denomination of Christianity I cannot wrap my mind around. But so they do acknowledge science, and they are incredibly Christian, so that is possible. And the thing is I know that there's different. Obviously, there's like Christianity in its pure form, where like I know that there are people listening to this that like genuinely are Christians, right? Like do unto others as they would have do unto you. Like you believe the Bible, you follow it, you like truly internalize it, like it is your belief system. And you treat everyone like equally, you are loving, you're compassionate, right? You follow all the you do your best. You're not perfect, but like you do your genuine best. And then there's a large chunk of Christianity, obviously, that is the issue, where it's like it's all about appearances. They just want to look Christian, and then when they go to when their private lives, they're kind of just awful people. And it's like the thing is they don't actually believe, because in order to a lot of so America is a culture of narcissism, which doesn't mean that everyone in America could fit the diagnostic criteria for narcissism. So a culture of narcissism is the sociology, like study of groups level, and now individual narcissism, that's individual psychology. So much like a culture of narcissism, we have a culture of alcoholism, where it's that narcissism is much more normalized, much like alcoholism is much more normalized. Not everyone is a diagnosed like alcoholic, right? But in the terms of like alcoholism, it's more normal to see someone, bent over, throwing up, kind of stumbling through the street on alcohol, and you're like, oh, that's funny. But if you saw that same person on meth or heroin, you'd be like, oh, that's déclassé, And so like a lot of people see within a culture of narcissism, people who are deeply self-centered and, kind of like toxic individualism. They only want to take care of themselves. And, there is some nuance between like, trying to survive, but then also like beyond just general survival, it's like incredibly self-centeredness. And it's good to center yourself, but when you center yourself, you become an individual and part of the community simultaneously. With toxic individualism, it's you, right? And it's a hierarchy. You like get ahead, therefore someone has to be beneath you. When you decenter all of the things that capitalism, patriarchy, all this stuff has taught you, right? You center yourself, but also you don't become above or below. You become a part of the world, right? You are two things at once, and that is completely, wave particle duality, right? Like it's electrons can be in two places at once. Like it's like two things can be true at once. Like the largest city in America is both Sitka, Alaska, and New York City. How that's possible is, there is a distinction in that Sitka, Alaska is largest by area, and then New York City is largest by population. But if you were to say there's two largest cities in America, you would be technically correct. Now that does get into like certain distinctions. But so we are going to talk about the moral motivations. There's a lot of like sects of Christianity, Protestants, Catholics, the Amish, and there are some like various communities that have issues with vaccines and, not ingesting or taking anything during Ramadan, or like, certain ingredients within vaccines. And I did want to focus on Christianity, though, because this is a, quote, Christian nation, I guess. And there's kind of this, people are reverting back to Christianity with like the rise of Christian nationalism. And so the thing is as someone who was raised deeply Christian, it isn't damn near impossible to actually convert someone who has the type of Christianity that's like toxic individualism, all about appearances, because that goes very nicely with narcissism. And the thing is like religious groups, you you have a group, right? And so like social beliefs, norms, like attitudes are reinforced like by your immediate community. The thing is like a large part of, so also what's a fun fact is that there's not really effective therapies for narcissism other than AA, because narcissists and alcoholics share a lot in common. And so the thing is like some narcissists will be recommended to go to AA. And so when I trying to like pull this, these groups together, the thing is when you get sober, a large thing that deters you from getting sober is that your friends they stop relating to you, and they stop wanting to hang out with you. Like, sure, there's going to be a lot of great friends who are like, genuinely happy. But if you drink with these people, right, and you all drink in excess and you start to like, oh, this is bad for me, I'm kind of like not doing well, they're going to feel like, oh, you're better than me. Or, oh, you don't have time for me. And the thing is being sober around people who are like wasted all the time. Now, I am around people who drink, and I by no means judge them. I think that would be deeply ironic if I was like, wow, I wasted 10 years of my life and look at you guys getting drunk right now. But no. So when you're trying to get sober, the temptation is way too strong. And then also you may be trying to like physically distance yourself from people in the moment, and then just like when you're on your own. And so people can feel that distancing, and that distancing can feel like judgment or condescending. And also a lot of people interpret getting sober as being better, which it's not. The thing is when it comes to the addiction community, if you really should not bring shame in it. Because, people who have substance issues are always judged and deeply stigmatized. And so a lot of people think it's good to like shame people into getting sober, which does not work. The thing is alcoholism is a disease, and so it's kind of like if you were to think about, oh, if I shame this alcoholic into getting sober, like think about that in like terms of eating disorders. Like, have you ever had a friend who's had an eating disorder, and has shame ever been an effective tool to convert them? No. If anything, they're going to hide, or they're going to hide their behavior. And so now they don't trust you. And so like the bond is now broken. The thing is though, narcissism is not substance abuse. It does kind of like look similar with like behavioral patterns, but therein lies the rub. Now we're going to get into, where is the beginning of this? Because I also started the notes at the end of my last podcast episode. Please watch the first episode, because I did specify which type of anti-intellectuals I believe that we can truly help, and that's sorry, I thought I heard something, and that's people with like more like informational needs, or like they're more concerned with consequences and like what's the point, the objective. And there's been a disconnect in the information that's been provided. And so now when it comes to religious and philosophical reasons, it is very, very, very hard to convert people with deep religious ties, especially Christianity. And so the thing is my recommended proposal, I was like writing it up, and I was like, the thing is they're going to have to hit, similar to like a substance user, they're going to have to hit a rock bottom. And now I suppose with the Trump administration and, capitalism and just all the infighting from the 1% actually is really good, because, I'll explain it. But they're going to need a complete, visceral, experiential bottoming out, rock bottom, in order for them to change their own behavior. This is, you could go to like, there's Al-Anon, which is like the support group for people who are in relationships with like romantic or, familial relationships with someone who's an alcoholic. And it basically says like, you cannot change another person. I mean, you can go ahead and try, but the thing is you're going to use all your individual energy. And the thing is, at the end of the day, like they could still decide like, oh, I'm going to do this. And that's the horrible part of when people do message me about like addiction stuff. They're like, how do I make my husband or my brother or someone realize they have a problem? And the thing is like, you can point it out, yes. But the thing is much like an eating disorder, they're going to hide, or they're going to hide that behavior. And so you have to be more skilled in intervention tactics. And you also have to approach with nothing but love if you'd like to retain this the relationship. Now, you could approach harshly and you could tell them the straight up truth, but in terms of retaining the relationship, it will likely fall apart. And I do apologize. So I assume that you'd like to approach. The thing is the best way to help someone with a substance use problem is to model the behavior you want to see. That's the best thing that you can do, because people are influenced by others, right, in their community. And that's, why beliefs are so strong. But then it's still, at the end of the day, it's up to this individual to see like your good behavior, or like, the fact that, they kind of are losing themselves. They ultimately have to decide if they'd like to get sober or not, or join any sort of program. And I would also encourage you to refer them to specialists, because when it comes to substance use, it needs to get, if you want to give them tough love, it kind of has to get a little bit more impersonal. And so that's usually why they bring in experts with substance use history, so that the substance user knows that, oh, we're on the same page. But also, like, when we're all on the same page in terms of substance use, you can talk a lot more harshly with love. Like if it's similar to like if you had a straight person come into a gay friend group talking about like, toxic dating in the gay scene, you'd be like, now who the hell do you think you are? But if you had another gay person come into a gay group and then was like, okay, so gay dating can be toxic, you'd be like, okay, they're talking about something harsh, but they are one of us, so I'll hear them out. So it's best to get experts who have a history with substance use and know intervention tactics and harm reduction, and just getting the resources they need, because if you just spend all of your individual energy trying to change this person, you're going to lose yourself completely, and it's not even guaranteed to stick. But so in a similar way, when it comes to trying to convert someone, their beliefs because of religious reasons, they kind of need to hit their rock bottom. And with, I guess, what's termed the fuck around and find out stage of the Trump administration, I think a lot of them will find out soon. And yeah, I'm going to keep reading this, but yeah. Religious and philosophical reasons. Yeah, there's various, reasons that people oppose vaccines specifically. But I'm going to focus on Christian nationalism. It's also because it's on the rise, and that does, quote, make sense. People who can't accept the future will sprint faster and faster to the past. The thing is that the past is over. It's done with. You can't go back. The thing is the more you try to go back in the past, the farther you pull that rubber band back, and eventually the tension between the reality and the entire group is going to snap, and that rubber band is going to cut you in half, like one of those, slack lines on a ship that holds back, an aircraft or something, and that's going to cut you in half. So I would just not try to revert back to the past as much as you can. Just become more adaptable, and that's what I'll get into. Like young men are becoming increasingly religious, more so than women. That doesn't mean that all men are religious, But with the increase of legal rights and shifting cultural and economic trends, the spike does coincide with the previous episode, like I said, regressive attitudes that spiked during the civil rights movement. The McCarthyism and just like fighting against the, progress they couldn't, because in a colonized, deeply individualistic, hierarchical culture, it's a zero-sum game, which means that if someone else wins, you lose, which is not correct. So yeah, anytime they see someone winning, they interpret it as them losing. Okay, but yeah. So, I did say growing up Southern Baptist, it's damn near impossible to convert people with deep religious beliefs. And so it's, to me, a waste on an individual level. Now, if, like I said, you pull in resources and you pull in people who have intervention experience and harm reduction experience in terms of, I guess, religious beliefs, then that would be better. The thing is when you take someone out of a religious context, you should have them set up with another group immediately. Now, that doesn't mean another religious group, as that could go into transfer addiction, but a support group would be the best thing, because you need to consider that, beliefs don't exist in a vacuum. And also this is they're losing their community. So it'd be nice to have them transfer to another community that's built off support. But for you to individually and take on that endeavor, that would not be wise. However, if we redirect our energy to the systems that be, we oppose the entire Christian nationalism movement as individuals collectively, we do have a shot at a happy and comfortable life. And I did want to talk about, again, decolonizing therapy. So why I say this is the thing is instead of focusing on converting individual, I kind of want to collapse the system. And you're like, is that the most immediate thing, practical thing for my mother, my father? No, it's not. But like I said, you're going to hurt yourself. So best to, try to talk to them as much as you can, but then focus energy at collapsing the system. And I do want to say there are multiple entry points to collapse the system. See, the United States and a lot of other colonized countries, so colonialism rests on two pillars. One is supremacism and the other is capitalism. And, all of these systems reinforce one another, and destroying them collectively will be difficult, but we can dismantle them or shatter them one by one. The thing is much like a machine, instead of trying to, you could, I don't know what's considered bad to say out loud. You could the entire thing, or you could destroy them one by one. And so if there's two pillars, much like any sort of construction project, you knock over one pillar or the other pillar, and the thing will come crumbling down. So I did have a first couple of podcast episodes that were on decentering men, but like I said, you can decenter anything. As it's an addiction and recovery conversation, you can decenter whiteness, thinness, men, gender, drugs, alcohol, sex. And that doesn't mean that you abstain from any of those things. It means that you don't find, love, intimacy, connection, and through you don't see love, intimacy, connection exclusively through those lenses. You center them, and then if you have men in your life or alcohol or drugs, those are secondary to your primary objectives of, love, intimacy, connection, or whatever things that you center in your being. Now, back to colonialism, it's supported by supremacism, white supremacy, male supremacy, patriarchy, and human supremacy. And human supremacy is, leads to ecocide, the destruction of the environment by humans. And so, white supremacy, patriarchy, and then the destruction of the environment. We can collectively knock supremacism down a peg, but we need to, first off, decenter whiteness, patriarchy, and care about the environment. And how you decenter whiteness, again, is not by stopping being white. It's that we are taught that being white is right. White is the correct way to live and exist in the world. We only want to hear white stories from white voices. Only white people are allowed their humanity. No one else is allowed their complexity. Unpack all of those, and they are not true. And the thing is this is not a one and done thing. A lot of people say, oh, I've decentered, totally decentered men or decentered whiteness. No, this is an addiction and recovery conversation, which means it requires day-to-day effort. In addiction and recovery spaces, it is one day at a time. That's because just because I got sober doesn't mean that I don't still exist, in a culture of alcoholism. That doesn't mean that I don't go out and I'm not pressured, or I don't feel someone doesn't offer me a drink, right? If you decenter whiteness, it is an everyday sort of thing, right? It is an active effort to go against white supremacy, right? And now I'm going to talk about supremacism and capitalism, because those are the two pillars. The first link between supremacism and capitalism is white supremacy, which leads to slavery, which leads to cheap labor. The second link is white supremacy leads to genocide, leads to a resource grab. The third link is by the patriarchy to invisible labor to capitalism. The fourth link is by patriarchy to femicide, domestic violence, and child abuse. And then that leads to, all of these lead to trauma. And then the fifth link is by human supremacy, which leads to ecocide, and that can lead to trauma and inflammation. And then ecocide also leads to exploitation of resources. Now, this is in the book, like I said, Decolonizing Therapy. And if you want to take it line by line, or if you want to focus, like destroying one part in your personal life, one part, because then this structure you kind of recreated internally, right? And the more you dismantle, the more you destroy parts of these structures. You keep calling back your labor. You keep taking care of yourself, connecting with your community, but also centering yourself, not assuming that, oh, if I never marry a man, I'll be unlovable. That is not correct, right? You start like slowly undoing these Jenga pieces because this structure has rebuilt in your mind. And then you collapse it, right, internally. And then when enough individuals start collapsing that, right, we start to change the system. And I'm going to explain that through chemistry, actually, this time. Okay, yeah. So when it comes to decentering and why decentering and centering, they're social scripts, social prescriptions. To do this correctly, you must do this, right? In order to be a man, you cannot cry, right? You cannot express your feelings. You cannot tell your friends you love them. Like, you must make more money than your wife. If you decenter what society, if you undo the script that society has taught you about what it means to be a man, you can still be a man, but also, you're now given freedom. You're given movement. It's more fluid, okay? So with decentering, you're questioning more crystallized beliefs. Now, it may not say that your beliefs are necessarily crystallized, because crystallized beliefs means that they've solidified, right? They are something that's incredibly hard to destroy. Like I was talking about within the knowledge illusion, is that there's fluid beliefs and then there's crystallized beliefs. And the reason why a lot of people's, when you shatter their beliefs, is because they are crystallized. You shatter something like glass and the shards are going to pierce a whole bunch of stuff within you, like psychologically. And the thing is, the weight of knowledge, very literal, right? And so crystallized beliefs, you think that this is supportive. It's just, shatters, you stab with glass. Now, if you can't really shatter a fluid belief, well, you can't, as it's fluid. You just kind of, you can't see the motion I'm doing, but you just drop a rock in a fluid belief, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's some evidence I can get behind. I totally agree with that. Yeah, I'm just going to adapt and change. A new pebble in the pond, and then you keep it moving. You're adaptable. So, yes, the weight of knowledge, very real. And if you have a high density crystallized belief, that's going to take a lot more pressure and a lot more heat to destroy. Now, socialists, communists, you're going to love this. Seizing the means of production. But no, okay, that will be at the end. But so a lot of these things that support colonialism, cheap labor, resource grab, invisible labor, trauma, inflammation, all this stuff is caused by, people have dehumanized you. We talked about this in the past, where it's like, if you view yourself through the lens of attractiveness and usefulness, and those two things exclusively, you view yourself as a tool. And so seizing the means of production is kind of allowing yourself your full humanity, right? And just kind of allowing yourself to expand beyond tool into human, okay? And now if you're no longer just a tool, right, and you command your own worth, then you are seizing the means of production. Okay, I did want to draw another analogy to the human heart. Okay, because we are going to talk about physics and chemistry. Now, hydraulics, right? You're like, what? Okay. So when it comes to decentering, okay, I want to talk about centering yourself and the heart and stuff like that, because hydraulics can apply to the heart. The heart, obviously, because it has valves and pumps. And so I'm going to talk about the use of force and fluidity and blood in the heart. And you're like, this is going to be a lot. I understand this is a long ass analogy, but I need you to get on the same page with me. Also, if you're like, you lost me at some points, it's totally fine. Okay. The human heart, hydraulic forces to help fill the heart. Researchers have contributed to a recent discovery that the heart is filled with the aid of hydraulic forces, the same as those involved in hydraulic brakes in cars. The findings open avenues for completely new approaches to the treatment of heart failure. Now, I am going to draw a comparison from the human heart to machines, but the thing is I'm by no means reducing humanity. We're not machines, right? I just want to talk about the underlying structure, okay? The mechanisms that cause blood to flow into the ventricles of the heart during the filling or diastolic phase are only partly understood, but, it talks about, proteins. Hydraulic force, which is the pressure a liquid exerts on an area, is exploited in all kinds of mechanical processes such as car brakes and jacks. In the body, the force is affected by the blood pressure inside the heart and the size difference between the atria and ventricles. Okay. You're like, this is going to be a wild ride. Okay. Hydraulic force, which is the pressure a liquid exerts on an area. So during diastole, I haven't said this word out loud, the valve between the atrium and the ventricle opens, equalizing the blood pressure in both chambers. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about blood is because I'm about to talk about consumption and overconsumption, hoarding of resources, and what that will do to the flow of your blood, okay? And we are the life force of this country, and we have some clogged ass arteries. Now, this is going to be a lot. I'm talking from going to crystallized beliefs to fluid beliefs. Now, hypercoagulation of the blood, right? It gets really thick, syrupy, viscous, and it clogs arteries, right? And so the harder your blood gets, the better that gets for you, right? Your blood pressure, right? And so fluid beliefs, right? Fluid beliefs sustain you, there's some movement. You're like, I'm following. So I did go into, liquid versus crystallized intelligence. Now, belief is not the same thing as intelligence, but just an example, like fluid versus crystallized intelligence are two. Is this making sense, actually?
Yeah, the blood analogy?
Yes.
Yeah, it's making sense.
All right, we don't want crystallized. We don't want super coagulated blood, right? We need fluid. So I'm trying to say this. If you have super thick blood, I'm not judging you. This is an analogy. I'm so sorry. Okay, so fluid versus crystallized intelligence are two types of intelligence that influence your ability to function effectively in your daily life. Function effectively, right? Like a heart. Fluid intelligence involves the ability to reason and think flexibly, whereas crystallized intelligence refers to the accumulation of knowledge, facts, and skills acquired through life. So some people say that intelligence starts to decline as people age. However, research suggests that while fluid intelligence begins to decrease after adolescence, crystallized intelligence continues to increase throughout adulthood. Now, the thing is that fluid intelligence involves ability to reason. And so why I say that we need to have a more fluid belief system or fluid intelligence is you have the ability to reason. When it comes to beliefs based on morals, specifically religious morals, you have close to no ability to reason with them. Because the thing is, reason involves information. And if you present information to people who believe in that they're all going to be raptured soon, and I'm being super, I don't want to isolate. The thing is it's nuanced. All right. Fluid intelligence is the ability to perceive relationships independent of previous specific practice or instruction, like rules, prescriptions, concerning those relationships. It involves being able to think and reason abstractly and solve problems. This ability is considered independent of learning, experience, and education. Now, with the previous episode, I said that, before we can think abstractly, a lot of people do need the concrete terminology, the concrete language. And so the first episode is the first step in this, right? We don't want to leave anyone out because they haven't had access to education. We need to educate them as well. We need to build them up so they can think abstractly and now get to fluid intelligence, right? So this is multiple phases. So that's what I'm saying. When you encounter an entirely new problem that cannot be solved with your existing knowledge, you must rely on fluid intelligence to solve it, and that's, the arts, right? Improv, going off book, going off script, going off social prescription. Example, coming up with problem-solving strategies, interpreting statistics, philosophical reasoning, solving puzzles or abstract problems. Okay? So crystallized intelligence is based upon facts and rooted in experiences. As we age, we accumulate new knowledge and understanding. Crystallized intelligence becomes stronger. Now, having crystallized intelligence is not necessarily a bad thing. And the thing is, like knowing how to do things concretely. But the thing is if you think about it, like, actually, that's going to get way too complicated. Having understanding of how things work mechanically, or, learning something that's practical in your field is totally fine. The thing is when it comes to society and individuals, like, you can't just be like, oh, through experience I learned that white people are better. Through experience I learned that men are smarter than women. And you cannot allow those beliefs, those societal beliefs, to become crystallized, as they are not true. Yes, you have been taught those through privilege and, indoctrination and being socialized, but those are the beliefs that you should not allow to get crystallized. Go ahead and let your understanding of how a car works get crystallized, but when it comes to people in hierarchy, that's where you need to dissolve those, okay? So nuance for crystallized intelligence, not beliefs. Crystallized intelligence is not a form of fluid intelligence that has become crystallized. But crystallized beliefs are different. They can solidify. But yeah, so how to improve fluid intelligence? Challenge yourself, mix up routine, think creatively, socialize regularly, okay? How to improve crystallized intelligence, which all requires, rigorous, continuous repetition, learn a new language, learn a new skill, take a class, read books. So example, when you decenter men, right, you can undo the sort of solidified belief that men are better than women, right? If crystal can be melted and then, kind of solidify again. So if you're like, a lot of people say that sexuality is fluid, sexuality can be fluid. For example, a lot of lesbians have, come out later in life. And the thing is lesbianism is it's pretty hardened, right? It's not a fluid sexuality. But the thing is it could have been, with societal pressure, and with pressure comes heat, right? You could, you're in a state of sexual fluidity, right? Because you're being under constant pressure, constant heat. And then when you decenter men and you decenter gender and all this stuff and what it means to, then that pressure and heat has gone away and you crystallize. And so the sexuality is no longer fluid. Okay. So that's the nuance with that. And there are some people who were born knowing that they were lesbians, and God bless you. I'm so happy for you. And then, yeah, so it's just a way to say that, like, things can change states depending on the type of pressure and the heat that's applied. And if it's from your family or society, then you kind of will be in a more fluid state from them. And then when you finally get away from that, who you truly want to be will crystallize. That's why saying, like, oh, if you decenter men, you don't cease to be a man. You just kind of get all that shit that stuck to you off. And now man is whatever you'd like, and then also it can be fluid or it can be crystallized. Like, this state you'd like to be in is up to you. Okay. There's also fluid identity, and that was about third culture kids. And I also did a podcast episode on emergence. I guess all of these, episodes build upon each other, which is the essence of a class. That's great. I think I think you guys can follow along pretty well. Well, if you can't, please let me know in the comments. I'm going to drink some water. So I guess this is... Did you take chemistry?
Yeah, I took chemistry.
I just know that you went to a Christian high school.
I went to a public high school.
Oh.
But I went to a Christian university.
Okay, and I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to say that Christians don't learn science. I just don't know what's...
Yeah, how dare you?
Which sciences are taught, though?
Well, at my Christian university, there was chemistry. There was all the sciences. Mm-hmm. But I will say, like, they probably don't teach... I think they talked about evolution, but it's like, they teach evolution because it's in the curriculum. Mm-hmm. But they're like, or they try to, like, disprove it or things like that. But they'll, like, teach it because it's in the curriculum.
Yeah, I had a couple friends growing up that believed that dinosaur bones were buried as a test from God. So...
Wait, what?
So dinosaurs didn't get, like, they didn't die out. They didn't get struck by, the earth didn't get struck by a meteor or anything. God placed dinosaur bones in the ground to test us when we found them.
But I'm like, what's the test? I guess it's supposed to be, like, for us to be, like, our faith is stronger than this.
Yeah, I mean that's literally the issue, is that, like, they're literally denying science. They're like, is your faith in God stronger than, you know, what you see? Because what I'm seeing is dinosaur bones that have been here for millions of years. Deny that, and you teach people that in your youth, and now you're denying science throughout the entirety of your life.
I know, which to me, like, when I remember being in high school and college, like a Christian high school college kid, and I was like, why can't we believe in both? Like, why can't it be like, if you believe God made all these things, like, he made gravity. Like,
Yeah.
you can, and I had, like, I think the part of, like, the church and stuff I went to, everyone, like, did believe in science.
Yeah.
And, like there's plenty of people who, like, worked in science, or, like, teenagers who were like, I'm going to go into science. But yeah, something about evolution that, you know, but it's like, maybe that's how God created the earth, was through evolution. Like, he could have still orchestrated that. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if you, like, yeah, God could have. I mean, higher power, whatever, however you define it. AA. No, I'm not in AA. You know what? Fuck it. I'm in another recovery group now. But yeah, like, if you believe in a higher power, like in a religious context, that's totally valid. And it's just interesting that science could fit into so many religions. And what I think is so great about Buddhism is that there's so much actual science and philosophy in Buddhism. I'm like, everyone has got to check it out. And because the thing is every physics book I read, like, at some point they're like, if we were to say which, I guess, you know, belief system is closest to it, they're like Buddhism. And so that's not saying that, physicists need to validate Buddhists. It's like, Buddhism is, if I were to bet all my money in the world on which belief system is correct, quote unquote correct, I'd put all my money on Buddhism. Okay, so this is a reframe of the 1%. And the 1%, they pretty much control all the assets. What's interesting about, you know, why we need to get fluid, and this is how we change, you know, what's happening in America when it comes to moral panics and, you know, beliefs that are not informed by facts, is that if we change our structure, and if we start to dismantle the structure at B, you know, we could individually convert, but that would just take up so much energy and time. So what's interesting about, you know, the 1% and colonialism being supported by supremacism and capitalism is that the 1% is kind of having a shit ton of infighting right now because of Elon Musk. So in capitalism, with all the tariffs, it's actually starting to implode in on itself. And that's the result of toxic individualism, right? Like, America put blanket tariffs across every single country, even a country with no people and just penguins, because we're idiots. The thing is we don't exist in a vacuum, right? Like, China, Korea, and Japan, who have historically fought longer with each other, longer than America has existed, has decided to team up against America. Do you know how absolutely dog shit, individualistic, like, white supremacy, like, bullshit we have to be for those three countries to come together, you know? And so, you know, which is interesting. I don't know if this joke is in poor taste, but there was something about, you know, the trade war or something coming to an end soon because Trump and showers. You know what, actually? Trump showers. And I did not want to make, Donald Trump signs order to make America's showers great again. Trump is right about shower heads. So shower head regulation. They're trying to regulate us specifically, guys. Right? Shower thoughts. Make showers great again. I've been great, fucker. Sorry.
Get 'em.
Get 'em. It's some BS excuse. So yeah, capitalism, and one of the pillars is kind of imploding in on itself, which is great. And okay, yeah. So the people in power have crystallized their position in society, but the bonds of their connections are incredibly weak, like rock candy. When we think of the 1%, we think of a hierarchy, a pyramid, and pyramids are solid structures. However, if the 99% make a concerted effort to melt or dissolve crystallized beliefs collectively and dissolve our social scripts, the 1% at the top of the pyramid now sinks into the 99%, right? The pyramid is now just a blip at the top and then a whole bunch of water at the bottom. So the 1% falls into the fluid, all right? Now you guys are going to have to follow me. The 1% hoards cultural resources. At their whim, they, quote, treat us to rights, liberties, pizza parties, but they never give us enough to sustain life. I know it was super annoying first place I worked, they got us a ping pong table and pizza parties. And we were like, can we have health insurance? And they're like, no, we're just going to treat you. So it's like a one and done thing, right? They gave you enough to survive that day. So capitalism is built on excessive consumption and, consumption, like alcoholism. That's why, yeah. So yeah, but and when it comes to consumption in the capitalism sense, it's like, oh, we're constantly consuming products, or like we're trying to find fulfillment elsewhere, just sort of, and that's kind of by design. So capitalism being built on consumption also explains a lot of sayings, oh, she has good taste. Champagne taste on a beer budget, it's in poor taste, right? Okay. Like my previous episode said, most morals are rooted in disgust. Disgust has two sensory components, smell and taste. Smell has more range, leading to generalizations and moral disgust. Taste must be consumed, okay? However, taste is 90% smell. So whenever someone says they're the taste makers, you need to go to smell, aka the people that have been, seen as less than because they're likely influencing what has made the taste, right? And that's like colonizing and like gentrifying and, co-opting and like taking, different aspects of other people's culture and claiming it as your taste. No, smell doesn't form taste. But the thing is, okay, yeah, taste. Okay, yeah. So taste must be consumed, and that leads to visceral disgust. Visceral disgust is an evolutionary trait that protects us from bodily harm. When the 1% declares something in poor taste, they are saying that less money, the lower classes, are biologically repulsive, rotted, spoiled, unclean. Our existence makes them gag, okay? So, even the term gag me with a spoon is used to indicate disgust, right? So the 1%, when they say that they're taste makers or they have great taste, right? They're saying that people who don't have great taste are repulsive. Now that does kind of, that is, the thing is if you say something's in good taste, you could have your own sort of meaning applied to it, but that's what it means in terms of disgust. And yes. Okay. However, we are not rotten because we're not dead yet. Okay. And then this is where I bring in the heart and hydraulics and chemistry. So stay with me. A symptom of low blood sugar is an impending sense of doom. Any diabetics here? We validate me, right? Okay. So the 1% gives us just enough sugar from time to time to give us the energy to keep going, aka sustain them, but not enough of where we can live comfortably. We quickly get afraid and sad when we think about the future. And fear and sadness together are dread and helplessness. Now, if you reverse that, sadness and fear is hopeless, miserable, and remorseful, okay? So fear and sadness is dread and helplessness. That's the combination to get dread and helplessness. Order does matter, and sadness plus fear is hopeless, miserable, and remorseful. Now, this is why I love explaining emotions. Remorseful is related to shame and humiliation. Humiliation is fueled and supported by ostracism, isolation, okay? So if you're feeling, sad and fearful, you feel also isolated. In a culture of toxic individualism, that is kind of by design, right? Isolate you away from your others in community. That's also how cults function and how, narcissists function and how and they want to get you away from others. They want to isolate you so you're easier to control, okay? So when we come together, when we decrease the pressure of humiliation, we relieve ourselves from isolation, okay? When you connect with others, since we are social creatures, you get happier, right? If in terms of evolution, being ostracized was a fear worse than death because it basically was a death sentence. If you kind of were already dying with the group, it's better to die with friends than alone. Yeah. Okay, so now the fear aspect is taken out of the equation, right? Because we're connected. But sadness still remains. However, sadness plus happiness is acceptance. Acceptance is tolerance, okay? Tolerance is open-mindedness, lack of prejudice, patience, discipline. And that can lead to uniformity of fluid beliefs, okay? We share the same chemical bonds. We become one liquid. All right. So this is a emotional equation that I'm trying to explain to y'all. All right. If we all have the same volume, belief in ourselves and others, right, and heat capacity, energy levels, since we've all been deprived of sugar, then when the 1% falls into us, they dissolve. Okay. Not to mention, and this is bringing it on home with heat and sugar. Sugar is calories, and calories is a unit of heat, okay? So they take all the resources, right? They make us isolated, make us sad and fearful. We have this sad, fearful, impending sense of doom because we've been deprived of, food and sugar, quote unquote, like resources. And so when we first come together, right, we decenter these, undo the scripts, right? We get more fluid, right? We share uniformity of fluidity, right? We are ourselves, but we're also connected to community. And now we all have kind of similar sugar levels at this point as, we've been deprived of sugar and, heat, but we start to, swirl around, mix everyone's, energy. So when sugar dissolves in water, it is evenly distributed throughout the uniform liquid, creating a solution. So the solution to, and why I mentioned pressure and heat is that, if we all are, we boil, basically, the sugar, falls into us, and then we turn up the heat, and then, you start to dissolve them, right, of their resources. And then the sugar that they've kind of consolidated gets redistributed between everyone, right? And now we all have the resources to live and maintain ourselves, and it's evenly distributed. Now, why I mentioned socialists and communists earlier, because they're like, is this the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory way to say, take back the means of production? And yes, it is. Yeah. The 1% is a big crystallized chunk of sugar, and sugar is energy and sugar is heat, right? And they've kind of taken it away. The thing is though, if we end up calling back our energy, communities call back their resources, we cease to feel helpless and hopeless. The impending sense of doom subsides. We feel one with ourselves, others, and the world, right? And so I did not forget ecocide, right? So when we feel, part of our community, we invest in our community, and the community doesn't include literally the land, right? And so, there is a parallel that I don't know if I could say literally, but this is the long way around, right? I'm not going to say what I want to say, but sugar, when completely dehydrated, separated from water, right? So like if, the 1% decides to take literally all the resources, all the sugar from the water, and we're just water, right? We all die out, which would suck. But them being completely sugar that's dehydrated, dehydrated sugar is incredibly flammable. It's actually explosive. So one spark between them and that's a powder keg. So they also don't want to remove themselves completely from the water. So they need us as well. But yeah, this was my way, and I don't want to say like what that would mean. I mean, if you'd like to interpret that however you'd like to interpret that, but this was my way to address the long, complex way that is, education, knowledge is power, right? Education is a privilege. And when it comes to, the first group of people who are anti-intellectuals, we need to make an actual, effort to educate them, meet people at their level, and kind of with discern between who, genuinely wants to learn and they just don't have the information or like the words, and they're getting frustrated and they're getting shamed and overwhelmed and stressed and they're scared, right? Versus people who have basically just like don't give a fuck about information at all, right? They will find out from the systems that be because they are not exempt from the systems that be. So they're going to have to hit their rock bottom. But the people who don't have access to education or understanding, we've got to be accessible, right? And then when we come together, right, when we all decenter whiteness, thinness, right, that's also like beauty standards and literally starving ourselves of nutrients, of energy, you know, and then the thing is also like just general starvation, right? When they're putting all these tariffs on, we have to fight back in ways that we can, right? We have to also call back our labor, and that starts with humanizing ourselves, right? Like finding meaning outside of, you know, usefulness and attractiveness, and calling back your energy, your time. I totally understand that we still exist in a capitalist system, right? You still have to work to survive. However, you can, if you're in survival mode, I understand that. But the thing is like, there's still more beyond, right? Like, I'm not saying quit your job and we all go live in the woods. No, like, that's like, me getting sober. I didn't stop existing within a culture of alcoholism. It's just, you know, I had to do what I needed to survive, right? And now I'm trying to get out of that. Literally, when I got sober, I went through withdrawal. And I didn't know that when you hallucinate, when you go through withdrawal, that is incredibly dangerous. And I was probably going to die, and I should have gone to the hospital. So go to the hospital if you hallucinate when you go through alcohol withdrawal. But so I understand, you know, survival mode. And that's not saying that I, you know, now I'm totally out of that. I'm saying that, like, it's still a fight because, like, you know, I sometimes when I go to bars, like or just a restaurant, like I'll have my friends like drink stuff before me, or like I can't, if I have people over, you got to take your alcohol with you. I can't go to so many events, or I shouldn't stay at like some events, and I just feel so disconnected. And so trying to connect with others is a huge effort. So I understand, you know, you work in order to sustain yourself, and you know, you got to get that crumb of sugar, but I'm saying we also have to come together at a certain point and dissolve all this shit. But this is my case of anti-intellectualism. I don't think you should try to convert people with deeply religious beliefs as an individual, because it's not just you versus them, it's you versus their entire group. And so help people with the consequence-based belief system, moral and philosophical. If they're up for a philosophical debate, then take them on. Theory bros, chill out. Don't be condescending, but this is where you could really test your muscles. But yeah, the solution is dissolution of the people withholding resources, and just being a fluid group, right? We have, you know, our different, we're all just chains of carbon. Well, actually, sugar is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. But I mean, that's life. But yeah, that has been my whole spiel. Sorry if that wasn't like a super concrete, weird. That was so no, that wasn't totally abstract, because I talked you through how the chemical process is. No, I didn't. You know what? That was a bit more abstract, so I do apologize to my concrete crowd. I appreciate you, and if you'd like me to iron out anything, or if you didn't get anything, totally, like, yeah. Oh, then the thing is like, why'd you bring up the human heart? Well, I guess the more accurate, and like more, instead of water, we're blood, right? Low blood sugar. They've, you know, kind of taken out all the sugar out of our system, you know, calories heat, right? And so like the blood's not pumping. And so I shouldn't have said water. I should have said blood. Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Nothing but the blood. I'm sorry.
I was about to come in.
Yeah.
Nothing but the blood of Jesus.
Yeah, and then we get like, you know, I turn my hat backward. I put a chair, and I like, you know, I kind of like straddle it, and I'm like, have you know who also said love thy neighbor? And then I'm like, fuck. But yeah, that is my spiel. We all if we want a chance at survival, we all got to come together and really, really unpack a lot of stuff. We will not survive alone. And evolutionarily, that's historically what's killed us. Oh, if history is bound to repeat itself, then let's go back a few billion years. Isolation, that'll kill you every time. It doesn't have to be the elements. It can be your own heart. You can die of a broken heart. You can also die from clogged arteries. You know what? So thank you guys so much for listening. This has been a whole long episode. Did you like this one, Rebecca?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. And if you are a Christian and you mean it, then I hope you have a good one. But this has been Schauer Thoughts. Please like and subscribe on YouTube and rate me 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. New episodes every Wednesday. Resources linked below. If I forgot anything, please let me know. All right, I will talk to you guys next week. Bye. Ah!